The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to hate it, tolerate it. We'll get into it. 489-1240 to dial up. 800-825-5865 toll free. You can also just chat. Not chat. That's the evil older brother in Weird Science. Chat.
It could also be the son of Tom Hanks.
Okay, is there a Chet?
Chet Hanks, have you not heard this whole thing?
No.
He's like a kind of wannabe rapper. He's declared this to be a White Boy Summer coming up. He has the song called White Boy Summer. I'm not quite sure.
Well, a Hanks spells that out for me.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the true idea is behind a White Boy Summer, as he says, but that's what he has declared. You should look into Chet Hanks. He's an interesting character.
Yeah, I'll let you relay it to me.
I think the years and years of his dad focusing more on his movie business than on fatherhood, which it sounds like they have a good relationship now, but it's led to an interesting son in Chet.
So, chat in the stream. Can do so, Hail Varsity YouTube. Log on, like, subscribe, do it that way. Hail Varsity Twitter feed as well at HVarsity Radio. Give that a feed. And follow. We'll be sure to jump in and get our starting five in a moment. Coming up on the show, we'll check in with Cedric Golden from the Austin American-Statesman. Cedric will join us. We'll talk some college football, some inside the NBA, what's their future, specifically with TNT partnering up with ESPN and college football to air some of the early college football playoff games. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes come to the defense of Harrison Butker. We'll hear from Fat Andy and Mr. Mahomes. Yes, Big Red Baseball, I have not forgotten about you. A bludgeoning, absolute bludgeoning last night, 15-2. I think of the scene from Major League where, the color analyst to Harry Doyle covers his mic and says, "You can't say GD on the air." 2 hits. That's all we got. 2 bleeping hits. Well, Nebraska, 2 hits, 2 runs yesterday.
You think of that scene, I think of the scene from The Simpsons. The stop, he's already dead. That's what I think of.
Okay.
That went over your head.
I've seen my share of Simpsons. 15 runs, 15 hits for the Buckeyes as it was just home run derby. A brutal 4th inning for the Big Red. People are ready to crucify Will Bolt for going with Brockett to start against Ohio State. I am not. I was okay with Brockett. He's your 3rd guy. You're taking on a 7 seed. You need more than 2 runs and 2 hits. You can't strike out 12 times. Can't leave 6 on base. Your offense has been the problem. Your pitching and bullpen, you laid it out perfectly yesterday, Elijah. You can't ask your relief to do extended work and expect good things to happen. What was surprising is that Clark got lit up. Only lasted 2/3, 6 hits, 8 runs, 2 walks. Olsen came in just for a third, still 2 hits, 4 runs. Ohio State's 1 through 3 were 6 for 12 and scored 7 runs on you. Nebraska's pitching didn't. They had to throw a 1-hit shutout last night, dude, and they didn't. The thing that sucks though is, you had a hitter's ballpark last night for the first time, it feels like, in forever at the Chuck with the wind galing out, and you score 2 runs. That's the issue. Now, you've got your ace tonight against Purdue. You've got McConaughey if you get the win to come out of the loser's bracket, and then who the hell knows what happens. There's just frustration with Nebraska baseball because they always take a step back. This is a step back, and I think they're safe for postseason berth, but so what? What are they going to do in the postseason? Are they going to go 2-Q? Are they going to go 2-out in Omaha? That's what ticks people off, along with the midweeks. I just think with their record doesn't represent how they are against quality teams. Every good team they face this year, it's not that they haven't won some big games, they have, but they're a 500 team or worse against good opponents this year. Look at their midweeks against Kansas and Creighton. They're a postseason team because of what they've done. Right? Their strength of record, their RPI. But when it comes to what they are, they're not a threat for Omaha. I'm not piling on after 15-2. They're just too inconsistent. Give them a year. And I know you're losing some pitching, but give them a year.
Well, they're a threat to Omaha if they had 3 Brett Sears, but they don't have 3 Brett Sears.
No, they don't, and a lot of people don't. I mean, the teams that are going to make the way to Omaha have pitching and hitting, and Nebraska doesn't have both play nice together in a game. These games that they should handle based on seeding, they don't. And let's be honest, maybe there isn't really that much gap between a 2 seed and a 7 seed in the Big Ten on a night-in, night-out basis.
Well, and we also talked about the Jekyll and Hyde nature of Ohio State last night. I'm not sure if that was Jekyll or that was Hyde last night.
They're good enough to win the whole thing offensively.
Well, when they have, what was his name pitching last night?
They called him Cheese.
Yeah, I just got the cheese at the end.
Yeah, Cheese was dealing. He's good. How the hell he's 6-7, I don't know, but he was really good last night. So you can get all over Will Bolt for going with Brockett.
I'm not going to.
No.
The simple fact of the matter, and a lot of people are going to sit back and say, man, you didn't use Sears last night, now you have to waste him in the losers bracket.
Think if you get beat with Sears last night, then all bets are off.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. People are going to say, man, you didn't use him in game 1, now you're going to have to waste Sears in the losers bracket because he can't lose now. But love it or hate it, Will Bolt, I think, is more focused on his pitching staff and getting them ready for a regional than he is for going through and winning a Big Ten tournament. He's going to ask the bats to go win a Big Ten tournament, not the pitchers, because he knows that the pitchers are more likely to be the ones that can be exploited in a regional if they're not ready to go. And if you're pitching him on short rest after he already pitched a ton of innings this season, I'm not going to hold that against Will Bolt. It's unfortunate. I think the bats kind of gave up whenever they went down by 11 runs in the 4th inning. That's unfortunate. Can I blame the bats? No, not really. You needed to be swinging away in those moments, and I think they got a little impatient at the plate. All in all, really, really disappointing that they lost.
Are you that surprised that they laid an egg? No, I'm not either.
No, I'm not surprised at all.
Did you make it through the ball game? No, I turned it after it got real ugly.
Yeah.
And I just kind of caught up with my score at the end of, it got to 15. Well, once it was 10-0, I was like, I'm out.
But simply put, love it or hate it, I think Will Bolt, his concern is doing well in a regional, doing well against the national competition as opposed to the Big Ten. You can sit back and say winning the Big Ten is a more realistic goal than making a super regional, but I think Will Bolt's dreaming big and saying I'm going to protect my arms for a potential regional than trying to wear them out for a Big Ten tournament title and not be ready to go for a potential regional. So we'll talk more about this with Evan Bland next hour.
Evan's coming up at 5 o'clock, a Jock Doc at 5:40, and lots of room for you. Babber's going to be with us tomorrow. So KG is in. He is first. Mike Corrigan checks in as well. Patrick is here. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, NU Baseball dead again. And Snitley's thoughts are a lot of Nebraska baseball fans. They just give us some consistency. And that this team's been consistent enough to be, 14 games over 500? You'll take it. Your RPI, strength of schedule, is going to get you in on Monday, unless you're the latest Big Ten team to be on the wrong side of the bubble, but I think they're safe.
Well, and let's also lay it out. I think this Husker baseball team is good enough to go win the Big Ten out of the losers bracket. It's a taller task to manage whenever you lose the first game, but it's still there for them for the taking. There's a reason that it's a double elimination in the Big Ten tournament. You still have what you're playing for ahead of you with your ace coming up. You got McConaughey, who's been good this season. That's still all in front of you.
It's still going to come down to more than 2 hits and more than 2 runs.
Yep.
That's the reality of it. Justin is in. Anonymous is in. He asks those Friday night home games, what will those blank holes think of next? He's referring to the Big Ten and those folks at Fox. Brian is in. Brian responding, don't drag Nebraska baseball out for the bring out your dead wagon yet. At least wait till someone delivers a finishing blow. Give him some time. Walter is in. You're going to have to bend the knee to TV, to the suits, if you want to keep cashing those fat TV checks. Walter, ding, ding, ding. You are absolutely right. Tuck is in, the roller coaster that is Nebraska baseball. I've never seen more ups and downs since 2-a-days in my Texas high school football days. Jeff is here. Fly too low. Says, can't wait to see what people's thoughts are on last night. We've shared some of them. Brent is in. He says, why waste the ace last night? Hopefully it works out. Cliff from Florida is in. Cliff, good to have you. Tim is also checking in. We'll get more of your comments on Husker baseball, and we'll open it up to Nebraska football as the announcement came down from Fox. Nebraska will be a Friday night affair against Illinois, 7 o'clock kick, and you are going to tolerate it. I think Nebraska will make some chicken salad out of this. Nebraska didn't raise their hand and volunteer for it. Nebraska is probably a little ticked off that this is how they're going to have to celebrate the 400th consecutive sellout. Think about that. Now, Nebraska will turn it around, and they will pimp the hell out of this. They are going to make it the place to be Friday night for any football fan. They will deliver another infomercial. Got to win the ball game for sure. Illinois is no pushover. But Nebraska and everyone else in the Big Ten. Here's your rundown, Elijah. Here is your list of Big Ten Friday night games. And it's not just Nebraska. It's Washington having to go to Rutgers. It's Oregon. Oregon having to host Michigan State. Oregon's got to go to Purdue. 2 Friday night games for the Ducks. SC hosting Rutgers.
At 11 o'clock Eastern.
11 o'clock Eastern. UCLA hosting Iowa Friday, November 8th. It's a short week for the Bruins. After Nebraska, USC make that UCLA Washington's a Friday night. Some of the Pac-12 games, though, they've had their share of Friday nights. Sparty hosting Purdue. And then you get into a Big 12 matchup, Utah at Central Florida. K-State hosting Arizona. That should be all right. That is September 13th. So there's a number of schools. And at least you feel better that USC and Oregon are having a gun put to their head to do these Friday night things. Here is what Week 4 is, schedule-wise. Week 4 is UCLA, LSU. Week 4 is Tennessee, Oklahoma. Week 4 is Iowa, Minnesota, Rutgers, Virginia Tech, Clemson, NC State, BYU, K-State, USC, Michigan. Those are the marquee non-conference or some conference matchups. When we talk prime time, or how do you get the ability to avoid being swallowed up, caught up in the shuffle? Where's Nebraska, Illinois fit into that? I want to see this if you're not a Nebraska fan. And it's probably last on the draft pick board of games and teams you want to watch. Nebraska will not waste a second primetime opportunity to showcase, to sell the program. You got to go win the football game and look like you're bowl worthy. Nebraska is in a spot now of the Purdue's and Indiana's and Northwesterns and Illinois and Maryland's and Rutgers. This is what hurts you as a Nebraska fan, Elijah. It hurts you that now you're in that conversation of, well, we've got a host. We're not just the meat or the eye candy for some place that won't draw anybody, a place that's been sold out for 62 years is now having to host Friday night. That's the new world you live in. It sucks. If you like golf, at least you'll get some fall golf on Saturday.
And one thing I said on my Twitter last night is a lot of people, the Regents would never allow a Friday night football game. It's not. The TV partners rule the roost right now. And I don't think it's a coincidence that whenever you're looking at the options, Rutgers was a homecoming game, and you saved the 400th consecutive sellout to be the potential Friday night game. I know some people don't like that.
You probably had a choice, Rutgers or Illinois.
I think so, too. We're going to make Rutgers the homecoming game. And you know what you can do on a Friday now? You can make that an all-day event for your 400th consecutive sellout. If you think back to Volleyball Day in Nebraska, the all-day event nature that was, you're going to cancel classes at UNL. You're going to make the 400th consecutive sellout an all-day event. I know it's not convenient for a lot of people, and if you look at families of high school football players, the media members that usually cover high school football, it's not ideal. Friday night football, simply put, is not ideal on a micro sense for the people of Nebraska, but for the TV partners, it is a money-making opportunity. I'd rather have this game on a Friday night than have it on Peacock, personally. Like, if it's down to those two options, I'd rather get the national TV spotlight on a Friday night. Am I overjoyed there's a Friday night football game? No, I'm not. Can I get down with it? Sure, I can. The more I think about it, the more positives are.
Your job is to beat out Syracuse, Stanford, and San Jose State, Washington State. You've got the Fox window, put on a great show, and make people go, man, look at Nebraska Friday night.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. More thoughts on this Friday night announcement. We say hi to Cedric Golden, at Ced Golden on Twitter, Austin American-Statesman columnist. He's a Heisman voter. Also, on Second Thought, check out his podcast. Ced, how we doing? Thanks for a few minutes, man.
Doing great. It's been a minute, Chris.
It has been. I wanted to give you a shout, say what's up, talk some ball with you, and just get caught up again. A lot going on in the world of sports, and I wanted to get your take. How would Friday night football at the college level fly in the great state of Texas, the home of Friday Night Lights?
Man, you know the answer to that. These people are not happy about that. Good Lord, man. I always say if you really want to clean up as a law-breaking burglar, move to Texas in the fall and hit a lot of these small towns on Friday nights because no one's home. From 7:30 to 10, no one's home. They're all at the game. And so, man, I'm not endorsing a life of crime, but it is a religion. It is a much bigger high school football state than it is a college football state. No question. There are only so many Longhorns and Aggies and Cougars and Horned Frogs to go around, and Red Raiders, Baylor Bears. The Sticks, man, are running this thing, and the prospect of a college football game on Friday night, especially for these families that have maybe a relative that's playing and actually on television. Now they're torn between that game and a Friday night game. In Texas, man, it's all about Friday night high school, Saturday college, Sunday NFL. That's how we do it.
That is the three in a row. That is the Trinity.
But on the flip side, now we're talking Sunday NFL, Monday NFL, Tuesday Maction, Wednesday Maction,
Saturday
Thursday
NFL.
more NFL. It just we're going to football every single day of the week.
Or, in other words, Elijah, heaven? You're talking about heaven. Yes. More of that. And I'm screaming it at the top of my lungs because my wife's not home. She hates it.
See, that's the glass half full look at things, I guess.
Well, and Cedric, we were saying, look, Nebraska, Matt Rule, they will make some chicken salad out of this. Nebraska's probably not real thrilled. The 400th consecutive sellout's going to be a Friday night game. Nebraska's not a stranger with Illinois on Friday night, but first time ever that it's going to be a Friday night in Lincoln. We'll see how the third largest city in the state responds. But I wanted to kind of get your take on Matt Rule being in the Big 12 and getting a glance at him when he was at Baylor. And, it's year 2 for Nebraska. There's excitement. There's Dylan Raiola. There's returning defense. There are some folks that think Nebraska may be top 25 preseason worthy, despite 5-7 a year ago. He's pretty buttoned down. Rule is with you got a lot of work to do. Just keep your head down and just work is his take on things. But what were you expecting from Rule at Baylor when you think back to his time there?
When you think back to his time there, it was an absolute disaster that he walked into. I mean, the Art Briles era, one of hope and promise. They produced a Heisman Trophy winner in Robert Griffin III, and so you thought that Baylor was the new power that was going to threaten the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Longhorns, and then all of a sudden, all the allegations started, and Briles got run out of there along with the president, along with the AD, and so when Rule took over, man, it was a low bar. And after a really bad first season, man, they had one of the biggest improvements from year one to year two, and all of a sudden, he's got that thing rolling. And the one thing that I really liked about Matt, he's a man's man, guys. He's a no excuse type. He's very, very faith based and very big into the spiritual side of a person as well as the football side. And that resonated not only with the kids, but with the fan base. And the other thing that I really liked about him is he single-handedly helped rebuild the culture at Baylor. He had the guys, these football players were out doing community service, speaking at youth groups, helping old ladies across the street, you name it, they were doing it. And within the span of 3 seasons, Matt Rule had the Baylor Bears as one of the most respected programs in the country. Now, I understand why he took the NFL gig. I get it. But not all coaches are meant to be NFL coaches, and he's always come across to me as a college coach. He's a leader of young men, and I respect him.
In the modern era of college football, as everything changes with NIL and the transfer portal, one of the things I think, you kind of touched on just now that sets Matt Rule apart is how he cares about the players as people before he cares about them as football players. And it's something that really resounds with the people of Nebraska. I guess from your outside perspective, that seems rare in college football nowadays, does it not?
Yeah, and there's some really good people. Steve Sarkisian is one of those, the Texas coach. He cares about the people and then the football player. I love the realness of Matt Rule. I love the fact that he just came out and go, hey, man, good quarterbacks don't run you a couple $1 million. I love that realness. That's stuff that we really don't know because we're not behind that curtain with them. And the fact that he's willing to tell us how the sausage is made and what it's going to take. And it's tough being in Nebraska, which has been a sleeping giant for 20 years now, guys. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since Nebraska has really scared anybody. And so for him to grab this thing by the horns and take on this undertaking speaks to his confidence, speaks to his ability to go get something, to accept the challenge. The Big Ten is not a cupcake league. It's not. And with the teams they've added, it's gotten even tougher. And so he's right in the middle of the country, and he's having to recruit against West Coast, Big 12, SEC, you name it. There's some good athletes that are up for grabs, and big bank football factories like Michigan are spending top dollar, and Texas as well, for the best talent. So I love that he's taken on this challenge. I love that Nebraska appears to be on the upswing after 5-7. They were in some close games last year that they could have pulled out. I really thought that they were going to make a bowl game, but top 20. If they finish ranked, man, that's a big time jump up. They have an opportunity to do that, but the schedule isn't easy. And we all know Illinois, man, they're no pushover anymore. They made a lot of noise particularly at the end of last season.
They did, and Nebraska found a way on the road a year ago to win that one. Cedric Golden's with us, Austin American-Statesman, at Ced Golden on Twitter, talking some ball here on Hail Varsity Radio on Second Thought Podcast. Download his pod. I want to ask you about Texas and how they've been able to navigate Cedric, Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning, and NIL. How good is Texas's war chest, and how is Sark juggled both these quarterbacks? Ewers did great. I mean, went to a playoff, but you still got the heir apparent right there.
It's really interesting, and it hasn't become a thing yet. But I'm going to tell you guys something. I was at the Big 12 championship game at Jerry World, and Texas had they'd beaten out of Oklahoma State, and that game was a game that we were riding on a tight deadline. So in the third quarter, the issue had been settled, and so I've started on my column. And I think early in the fourth quarter, a huge roar goes up, and I looked at my coworker Kurt Bowles, and I was like, "Did Michael Jackson just come back from the dead and walk out onto the field?" It was a roar. It was like a Von Erich roar from the 1980s when pro wrestling was big in Texas. And it was Arch Manning had taken the field. He's a rock star already. They love him. They love Arch Manning. They love him like they don't love Quinn. They don't have hatred for Quinn, but they just really have this. There's this hope with Arch that he is the next VY. He's going to lead them to the promised land. And that's saying something because Quinn Ewers led them to within 2 wins of the promised land. So I think Quinn took a nice step up. 21 touchdowns, only 6 picks, I believe. Very much more efficient. Had a really good spring. I got to watch him, guys. Texas had his pro timing day for its NFL guys, and they had all these receivers. They had four pass catchers get drafted, including the tight end, and they had Quinn throwing to him in front of the NFL scouts. Guys, he was dropping dimes. He was dropping absolute dimes. Threw it as well as I've ever seen him throw it. No pass rush, mind you, but he was throwing it. But I'm telling you, the one thing that makes me excited about this year, we're probably going to get to see Arch Manning more. Quinn Ewers has not gone wire to wire as a starting quarterback since he was in the 10th grade. He's always missed games. He's missed 5 over the last 2 seasons. And Arch Manning has looked really good. Threw for 385, 25 out of 32 in the spring game. 4 touchdown passes. People are excited for a reason about Arch, and I wouldn't be shocked if we saw both of those guys get extended play because Quinn just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And Sark is very excited because he's got 2 guys that he believes they can move that football and get them wins.
Cedric Golden's with us. Cedric, we're up against a hard break. Can I keep you a couple of minutes on the other side of the segment? Is that good, or are you on a deadline, bud?
Man, I feel dead, but I'm not on a deadline. I'm all over another segment. Let's do it, brother.
All right, hang tight. Cedric Golden going to be with us here, Austin American-Statesman.
Yeah, we got to get his take on Luka Doncic, the Mavs, Edwards, the Timberwolves.
For sure. I want NBA thoughts from Cedric at Ced Goldman on Twitter, and again, find him at Ced Goldman there. And on Second Thoughts podcast is where you can hear him.
Yeah, and as much as I don't want to talk about the Timberwolves, I know we have to. I mean, that's 2 blossoming superstars in the league right now with Luka and with Anthony Edwards.
Ced's my NBA guy because all those years, man, San Antonio's in the finals. And you got Dallas in the conference finals. We'll do some more college football with Ced, some Husker baseball thoughts when we get back as well, as Nebraska trying to stay alive in the Big Ten tournament. But a couple more minutes. Stay with us here on the other side. Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Evan Bland going to join us in hour 2. 489-1240, the numbers to get in. Podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube with Hail Varsity YouTube channel.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And we have a little overtime here with Cedric Golden, Austin American-Statesman, at Ced Golden on Twitter. On Second Thought Podcast is where you hear him. Cedric, thanks again for a little OT. We need to get some NBA and Your take here on the Western Conference Finals here. The Wolves, man, they dethroned the champs. Sorry, Elijah. And you have, Kyrie and company waiting in Dallas. You excited about this matchup?
Man, I am. And I watching the Nuggets. The Joker, to me, is one of the most amazing big men I've ever seen. And I grew up watching Hakeem and Kareem and Patrick Ewing and some really good, great centers, David Robinson, Shaq. But, man, that guy, he just ran out of gas. I don't know. Elijah, I guess you're a Nuggets fan. I don't want to be accused of asking a stupid question like he said to the guy that asked a really good question, but you're up 15. You're up 20 at one point. Why didn't you give the Joker a blow? More than 30-second blow. He had nothing left in the fourth quarter. You can't have that guy going wire to wire, and I just think that cost him the series, and I was really looking forward to seeing if they could get a repeat. Shout out to Minnesota. Shout out to the T-Wolves, and Ant-Man is the athletically, he's the closest thing to Jordan we've seen. That's going to be a great series. I think it's going to come down to the stars of those two teams, Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, not in that order, but you know what I'm talking about. And then Ant-Man and Karl-Anthony Towns. Can Karl-Anthony Towns be a suitable Robin on a team that's pretty deep, but a little bit lacking in big-time dependable offensive punch? So I give the T-Wolves the edge only because I know Luka's not 100%, and Kyrie hasn't shown up in some first halves. So it does have the feeling of a 7-game series, though, unlike the other one.
Yeah, I'm super excited for this. I think I'm siding with the Mavs. I love Luka. Luka's great off the court. Kyrie off the court's had his issues, but I think he's entertaining as hell on the court.
He's awesome.
I'm with 7 games, I hope, is what this series gets. Is what this series deserves. To answer your first question about the Nuggets, error in roster construction this year. It worked for you last year to have Aaron Gordon as your backup center in the postseason. This year, whenever you have a more complete Timberwolves team that's been able to gel together, you're not going to be able to roll with Aaron Gordon against 2 7-footers. They skirted by last year. They had DeAndre Jordan as their regular season backup center. They need to get that addressed. They also need to get a little bit more shot making on guys 7 through 9 on their bench. It was an error in roster construction. Timberwolves were built to beat them. We'll see if the Timberwolves are also built to beat the Mavs, but I think it's going to be a really entertaining series nonetheless.
I love the matchup of bigs. The Mavs have just a boatload of big guys that they can throw it. That they can throw it Gobert. That they can throw it the Big Cat, Guilford. They've got some big Powell, some big bodies that they could really throw. P.J. Washington is long and athletic, and I just think that it's going to be a shot-making type series. I could see games. I mean, Minnesota has a tremendous defense, but I can see Dallas making some shots and putting a lot more pressure on Minnesota on the perimeter. That's where Denver was lacking, man. When Jamal Murray and Joker score 70, you're supposed to win. You're supposed to win. Those other guys didn't show up. Where was KCP? Where was Aaron Gordon? Where were those guys? Christian Braun, the Kansas kid, was about the only one that had a pulse. So, and I know it's going to be a long off season for the Nuggets, but I am so looking forward to seeing this Western Conference series. I still think Boston has the best team, but the Celtics, man, they do have choke potential, and they nearly gave that first one away.
They survived.
And one thing I will say is I think the Western Conference is bound to be entertaining for the next decade, at least the next 5 years, with just the dispersion of talent that you have across so many different teams in the West. The West is going to be fun to watch for years and years and years. And I think we're going to get a lot of different champs coming out of the West over the next decade or so.
Could happen.
It's absolutely the best conference with the young guys. You got Ant-Man, you got Luka. We don't even talk about Ja Morant. If he figures it out, Zion Williamson. Those guys are all so young. Wembenyama. Yeah, the West is the best at this point.
And you didn't even mention Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker, with some different pieces around him, that the Suns team could still make a run. He's still really young, too.
Spurs want him bad, but I don't think they can get him.
Said, what do you do if you're TNT? You just got in bed with ESPN. You're going to be able to show some of the playoffs. That's going to cost you some money. Do you bring back Inside the NBA? What do you believe happens?
Well, they have it for next year, and then that's it. And that's it, man. Charles Barkley has a clause in his contract where he's out. Mm-hmm. If they lose the NBA, he can walk, and he's going to walk. Mm-hmm. He wants to be an NBA analyst, and he wants to be able to be on television and analyze games like he's done for the last decade, 20 years or so. And what a big loss for them. And NBC wanted it back, and Amazon is the future. And they've already contacted John Tesh to do the old NBA on NBC. They're going to redo that. I think TNT might just need to shut it down. Ernie Johnson is a Georgia guy for life. He went to Georgia. He spent his whole life working in that area. If I'm NBC, man, I would make a run at all of those guys, Shaq, Ernie, Kenny, and Chuck. I would see what's it going to take to get those guys and get that same crew, because I'm telling you, besides Hell Varsity Radio, that's the best sports show in broadcasting. It just is.
Check is in the mail, my man. Check is in the mail.
Send it. Oh, Venmo me, baby. Venmo me.
That's right.
Venmo me.
Check. What is this? Check. It'll bounce. Venmo me. We need to get Nebraska and Texas back to the CWS so we can have that cold beer together.
And I've been praying for it. It ain't happening this year. I think the Longhorns aren't long for this world. They're already losing their second game in the Big 12 tournament. They dropped yesterday's game 6-4 on a walk-off to a Texas Tech team that went 12-17 in the Big 12, and they're losing to Cincinnati today. Man, it feels like some two and brisket for the Beavos. I think Cincinnati might be having a little barbecue. But you're right, man. It's been almost 20 years since I've been to Omaha, and I was the beat writer then, and we didn't know each other at the time, Chris. So we need to get those teams back going, or at the very least get them in a bowl game against each other. We can do that too.
I think so. That expanded playoff would be a lot of fun with the old Nebraska-Texas feels. Cedric Golden with us. Austin American-Statesman on Second Thought Podcast, at Ced Golden on Twitter. Cedric, you're too kind. It's awesome to run you down. We'll do it again sooner rather than later. And thanks for a few minutes today, man.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a good show.
There you go. Take care. There he is, Cedric Golden. Appreciate him. We'll wind down this first hour. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Cedric Golden. Both segments on the podcast page, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Hail Varsity Radio. Like and subscribe. Give us a rating. Good, bad, or ugly, we'll take it. Also, the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Can watch or rewatch the show that way. Here is Will Bolt last night after the beatdown by the Buckeyes, and Bolt on the Brockett decision.
Well, Sears coming back on, after throwing 95 pitches last week, and, on 4 days rest after being short rested last week, wasn't real interested in doing that. That wasn't really much of an option for us right there in that game. Brockett hadn't thrown a whole lot. My plan was for Brockett to go a complete game shutout. That was my plan.
He's shown the ability to do it. More from Bolt. How frustrating was that fourth inning?
Well, I guess you need to give, I know, we need to give Ohio State's offense a lot of credit tonight. They came out swinging, and good things happen when you swing the bat. And, They had some extra base hits that scored runs. They had some balls that fell down the line, but their bat was moving right. The bat was moving in fair territory. Some of those jam job shots or balls off the end of the bat, they're in fair territory because they were aggressive and they were moving the bat right. So give them a lot of credit tonight for what they were able to do. It's not like Caleb Clark has been a garbage time pitcher for us. I mean, we came in thinking he was going to give us a stop. We were going to have a chance to come right back in the game, and they were having none of that. I mean, they were taking great swings, and there was just not much we could do about it to get off the field.
More from Bolt here. What's more disappointing last night? Was it the pitching or the offense?
Well, I think certainly the pitching, because we knew the runs were going to maybe be tough to come by. Like I said, I mean, he's one of the top pitchers in the conference, and he's tough. Like, he's got great stuff, and he was suffocating the strike zone tonight. I mean, it was 11 of 12 at-bats that we were hitting with 2 strikes. So it's just, we're going to have to win probably a 3-2, 5-3 game in that ball game. So our inability to get off the field without, having the crooked numbers, that was the most disappointing part.
You had the opportunity with the wind blowing out to really get something in the air. Ohio State clearly did to get going that solo shot off Brockett. Elijah, I'm not keeping book when I'm watching this. That said, it feels like Nebraska just gets tagged when they do lose on 1-2 or 2-2 counts. They're not 3-1 counts where they get ripped. It's a 2-strike count, or pitch, I should say, that they get smoked on.
And last night, watching Brockett, a lot of fastballs on 1-2 counts that he was getting smoked on. That's a difference between what you saw last night against Kansas State. Kansas State, he was locating the fastball really well, putting it at the top of the zone, keeping him off balance with that slider.
That is breaking pitch.
The slider wasn't great. I mean, the only pitch that was really working for him last night was the changeup. To be 100% honest with you, I think the coaching staff saw that. I think that's why he got pulled so early.
Mm-hmm.
You just got a better pitching performance from the Buckeyes than you did from Nebraska last night, and that's
better
what you're going to
offense.
get. I mean, I think the final fact that it's a 13-run loss is really, really disappointing. The question now is, does this team use it as motivation, or do they roll over and say, you know what, it's on to NCAA regionals? And you wonder how Brockett's headspace is as well going into a regional as well. That's a concern more longer term.
Oh, it is. And do you, we'll talk to Evan Bland, Husker Baseball, and that Friday night football elephant that left a calling card. Hour 2 coming up.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. Hour 2 is here. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And big thanks to all of you. Doug checks in the stream and says it sounds like Nebraska has nailed down an official visit from the #1 center to Gorman Bishop in Vegas. It'd be his 3rd visit. Good for you. With the news, Doug, we like that news. If you're Nebraska football fans, we like talking to Evan Bland on Wednesdays as he's all loaded up for more coverage in Nebraska baseball. Does a great job with Husker football thoughts as well. At Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. Evan, you recovered from last night, a late one and not a good one for Nebraska baseball. How are you today?
Hanging in, yeah. I slept in just a touch later this morning after a late one the other night, and the mercy rule was a little bit merciful last night, not having to play out those last 2 innings.
Where are you at as Evan, the eye black wearing competitor, and Evan, the journalist, when it comes to mercy rule?
I don't mind it. I mean, certainly the journalist is happy to wrap that thing after 7. I mean, people would have been happy if you wrapped that thing after 5 last night. It just, that thing was set. And, I think competitively too, like, sure, like if you're on the losing end of that thing, you want to come back, and you always believe that you can do it. But if you talk to those guys, I think they would say, hey, let's save our pitching for another day. Yeah, this thing got out of hand, but over the course of the tournament, the best thing to do moving forward is to save the arms, call this what it is, and move on. So I like it. I know the SEC has it in the regular season. The Big Ten just added it on getaway days during the regular season. So certainly it makes a ton of sense in the tournament. I actually think they should add it a little bit more. I think both sides, Ohio State and Nebraska last night, would tell you that they probably weren't complaining that thing wrapped up when it did.
Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio, talking some Husker baseball as the Huskers back at it after a disappointing one last night. And Evan, quick thought here. We talked yesterday on the show about the Jekyll and Hyde nature of Ohio State, and it really came down to pitching performances. Fair to say that Nebraska won't see a better pitcher than that in the Big Ten tournament? I mean, that dude was dealing last night.
Yeah, unless Iowa and Nebraska go through the losers bracket and they see Brody Brecht in the championship, then yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. And most of these teams that are in Omaha have an ace. Penn State beat Illinois today, and they have a guy named Travis Linsman who dealed, and he's been their number one guy. I think the real difference has been once you get past that, what does a team's number 2 starter look like, number 3 guy? What bullpen arms do you go to after your closer and maybe your one other high leverage arm are spent? And that's the thing I think if you're Nebraska that you can point to and say, history would tell you that when you lose the first game in the Big Ten tournament in the 8-team format, nobody's yet come back to make the finals. But, as disappointing as it was for Nebraska, they do have Sears tonight. Brett Sears is going. They have Mason McConaughey waiting in the wings later on. They still have Will Walsh, who's had a complete game shutout in the Big Ten tournament a year ago. So, they do have arms. You look at just the earned run average in the league. Nebraska's more than half a run better than anybody else, which is a pretty big number at this point. And so this is the time, maybe it sounds obvious, but this is the time when you have to make that run. Purdue doesn't have the quality of starter going tonight that Nebraska does, and if the Huskers win and advance, they're not going to face a team that has a comparable starter to Mason McConaughey either. So the challenge, of course, is always trying to get off on the right foot. You save yourself games, and you improve your chances dramatically when you win that first game. But again, a lot of these teams in the Big Ten just don't have a whole bunch of options in terms of arms. So we'll see how it shakes out. For what it's worth, Ohio State, I think, is a prime example of that. I don't know how many other effective starters they necessarily feel great about deploying after this game. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, Nebraska still has to go out and do it, but clearly they have the advantage tonight. They're just going to have to play a few extra games if they want to get back into the title chase.
To zoom out just a little bit, Evan, though, it kind of felt like to me Will Bolt started Brockett last night. He wants to protect Brett Sears, doesn't want to pitch him on low rest, especially with the amount of innings he's put in this year and expecting that he's going to be a guy that probably opens a regional for you and gets you off on the right foot. I understand that side of things. I think it shows where Will Bolt's priorities are. The NCAA is probably being a little more valuable to him than a Big Ten tournament. But how much concern did Brockett's performance and the bullpen's performance give you as you look ahead to a potential regional?
Yeah, it wasn't great. There's not a lot of momentum there right now, and we've seen what some of those really spectacular bullpen blow-ups have looked like in the last couple of weeks, and certainly had another one that played out the other night. It's easy to, second guess. I would have thought Will Walsh would have been a good candidate to start in that opener. You look back to the Ohio State series that played out in Lincoln last month, and Walsh was actually pretty good in that. And Brockett, of course, everyone will remember the no-hitter, but the last couple outings have been a little bit shakier, including at Michigan State last Saturday, and he came back on having really not thrown all that many pitches a few days earlier. And you hope that he could have found something, and it didn't happen. And then you hope that Caleb Clark could find something, and that definitely didn't happen. And you just it got out of hand at that point. So, yeah, I mean, the strength for Nebraska has been the starting pitching. That's been the most consistent piece. That's why they've only lost 2 weekend series all year, which is a very strong percentage. But the question has always been, what do you do after Sears and after McConaughey? And sometimes it's been Brockett, sometimes it's been Walsh, sometimes it's been Ty Horn or Drew Christo. Caleb Clark has had his moments, but you just never know time in and time out what it's going to look like. So they're going to have their workhorses here coming up in the next 2 games, but I think you still are going to have that doubt in the back of your mind when they go to the bullpen, or if they play another 3rd game after that, like, what are you going to get? And I think that's that volatility that makes this team so it gives you kind of anxiety going into it, because you just don't know. Are you going to get the good version of the staff, and there is a version of that, or are you going to get the version that either can't throw strikes or throws strikes that are so good-looking that opposing hitters are going to jump all over it?
Evan Bland's with us, Husker Baseball Thoughts, Hail Varsity Radio, at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. Evan, where are you at with this Nebraska offense? 2 runs, 4 hits. That was, I might be giving them too much credit. They just have 2 hits, 2 runs last night. 4 hits. I was right the first time. Long story short, not much to help. 15 runs is a lot, but 2 runs is nothing, specifically with the wind blowing out. Can this offense get back on track? Are you confident that they can help maybe a good pitching performance or help out a off-pitching performance?
Well, it's you can kind of play both sides of the coin there, because a year ago they had their best home run hitting team ever, but if they weren't hitting home runs, it felt like, man, it was going to be hard to find a way to string together hits. And now this team is a little bit more versatile in its ability to score. It can steal bases and execute hit and runs, and is better with the bunt game. But it's been the inability to finish. That you talk about setting up innings and then knocking them down. They're setting them up. They're drawing walks. They're hitting singles. They're getting on base. It's just been really difficult for them to finish, to get that big hit. Again, they're not reliant on the home run ball. When they do get one, it feels like they hit the jackpot, right? You hit a 2-run home run. It's just kind of out of character for this team. So, I think it sounds overly simplistic, but that's kind of what it comes down to. And the other night, they kind of left. I know Josh Caron said they needed to kind of go back to their approach of swinging earlier in counts. They'd like to avoid 2-strike hitting if at all possible. Their strikeouts have been up the last couple of weeks, and they feel like maybe they've kind of gotten away from their mantra of hunting the fastball and doing that early in counts when you get more hittable pitches. So I think they're kind of working through that. They're working through their lineup a little bit too. I mean, I thought it was a curious move to put in Will Jeske as a true freshman who's only started 3 games until last night. You put Gabe Swanson back in there, and a lot of your guys who have been staples of your lineup, who were upperclassmen, didn't get in until they pinch hit late and the game got out of hand. Cole Evans and Ben Columbus and Rhett Stokes and Garrett Anglem, those are guys who have kind of gone to battle for you all year, and Nebraska chose to play matchups. So I think that's part of it too, is finding some continuity. Who do you feel like you can trust at this point? And then, again, coming through with that big hit. So can they do it? I don't know. It kind of depends on the day, on the pitcher, on a whole bunch of different things. But I think I have confidence that they can set up the innings. It's just a matter of, can you convert? And if you can, I think that's one of the X factors for how deep this team can go in the next week or two.
Evan Bland is with us here from the Omaha World Herald. Find him, follow him on Twitter at Evan Bland OWH. And Evan, let's switch gears here, talk some Husker football. Announced today, Nebraska is going to be playing Friday night against Illinois at September 20th. And first reaction, being a media member, a lot of people saying that night is for high school football. On the flip side of things, it's TV networks that rule the roost right now, and that's a great opportunity not only for TV networks but for Nebraska to be in a national television spot. Which side of that coin are you on? And the opportunity for Nebraska on Friday nights, or the opportunity and the stage it takes away from Nebraska high school football players?
Well, I mean, you certainly understand it. Like you said, it's the money. That's what you sign up for when you put this all out there. And as I'm sure you guys have talked about, some of the circumstances are unique. Where all of Nebraska's other road games outside of Iowa are homecoming for the opposing school, and so there was kind of an inability to move it there. I'm surprised. That this is happening just from the context of the last, 7 or 8 years, where Nebraska had a pretty strong stance that they would play Friday night games, but they wouldn't do it at home. And so, the high school part of it certainly is a factor. You hear often about the economic impact of a Saturday Husker game day in the city of Lincoln being, 7, 8, 9 million just for that weekend. And so what does that look like when you play that on a Friday night? What does the logistics look like of a weekend? I think that part's tough. So I get it. Like, that's kind of the world that we're in. I don't love it necessarily. I think you can certainly make the point or make the case that showcasing the 400th consecutive sellout on national TV will be a cool moment for Nebraska, and I think in the moment it will be, but it kind of feels wrong also that maybe isn't happening on a Saturday as pretty much almost every other of those sellouts have been. So it kind of is what it is. I'll be curious to see what high school teams do. I mean, there's enough notice that in theory a lot of the bigger games in the state could move to Thursday night. Maybe there's a willingness to be flexible there. I don't know how much ability or willingness there is on that end. So there's probably some time to figure this out, but it'll be a different animal for sure, especially having it at night during, like you said, the high school football season. It'll be a different deal. Probably memorable, and if Nebraska can, get a big win against Illinois, I think ultimately that'll be the thing that people remember.
Evan, do you think this gets traction? Fox's once inventory, they're going to book it. Oregon's on TV Friday nights twice. SC will be on there. Washington, they're even hosting. So the schedule is the schedule, but do you see a payoff? Do you see your college football fanatics and fans shifting over their Friday night plans, whether they're a high school parent or not? I mean, Nebraskans, yes, you're going to watch when Nebraska's on, but not every fan base is like Nebraska's fan base.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of a hubris there, I suppose, that they would decide to do that and put so many eggs in that basket. It kind of reminds me of the early stages of the college football playoff when they said, hey, we're going to put these games on New Year's Eve, and people are going to adjust their plans and because these are the games, and they're going to watch the games. And I think what they found was that's not necessarily true. People had parties to go to, they had social obligations, and the diehards will be there, and the fans of the schools will be there. But I think the general fan, the numbers would bear it out, didn't necessarily take it in as much. And so, my sense would be that would be similar for some of these Friday night games. Yeah, there's some showcase events for sure. They're going to have the window to themselves on a national level, but people tend to have plans on Friday night. Maybe you're traveling to go to a college football game on Saturday. Maybe you're at a high school game. Maybe, it's just the end of the work week and you have social obligations with your family or your wife or your girlfriend, right? Like that's kind of their night before a football Saturday and a football Sunday. So I'll be curious to see what the power is of some of those games on a Friday night, but I just have a hunch maybe it's not quite as impactful as some of the executives might think.
Evan, we'll check in with you again. Look forward to your coverage tonight. Nebraska, Purdue. The Big Ten baseball tournament at Charles Schwab. Evan will be front and center there with tweets and reports, and, of course, his post-game write-up with the Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Evan, we'll talk next week. Thanks again, man.
Appreciate it, guys. See ya.
There he is, Evan Bland, joining us, Hail Varsity Radio. Open phones next segment. Can weigh in, 489-1240 on this Friday night bomb, which, it's different because you're going to be hosting now. And if it's not Illinois, who would you choose to come to Lincoln Friday night?
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, 489-1240, numbers to get in. A little bit more thoughts on the Friday night extravaganza. How are you celebrating Sellout 400 with Illinois? Well, you're not going to get to tailgate on a Saturday morning or afternoon or no night game on a Saturday, but it is Friday. The edict by the Big Ten, the edict by your friends at Fox. And if you're coming in from out of state, or not out of state, but outside of the metros, I'm interested if you're selling your seats or you're just gonna give her hell and figure it out. This could be okay. This could be fun. It's just going to be different. I mean, the only time you've done anything other than Saturday was after 9/11, and you rescheduled and made up the Rice game that was a Thursday night. And that was not TV, that was radio only, but it was pretty legendary with the first responders walking in the American flag. A reminder to get buckled up, use your seatbelt. It saves lives, it prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Here is the flat-out honest truth. If you're Nebraska and the Nebraska brass not wanting to deal with Friday night football, at least hosting, you've dealt with being a participant because of your brand value going to locations that usually don't sell out. So you've been used that way, and that's been what you've been good for, because it's not wins on the field, and Nebraska apparently will be part of that mix. Again, Oregon and some of the newbies, part of their hazing ritual is you get to host one or two Friday night ball games. Iowa has to go on the road. They don't have to host a Friday night. So Nebraska, Elijah, if they do work and win on the field and start stacking together some seasons where they're in contention and they can get up to that level of, yeah, your brand is in that blue blood category, but now your wins on the field equal also some of those blue bloods, i.e. the Ohio States, Penn States, Michigans. Right now, those are the three in the Big Ten, the old guard, that have given the old Heisman to the TV executives. We are not playing on Friday night, and we're not hosting on Friday night, period. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State don't have to jack with it. They have been protected. Wisconsin also not dealing with it this season. Iowa has to go. It's the second time they've had to do it. They went to Maryland, I think, a couple of years ago. But right now, if you want to be able to put your foot down on some of these things, specifically a 400th sellout, and you can have the pomp and circumstance for it, but it's going to be on a Friday. Nebraska will again make chicken salad here out of this. They'll put on a great presentation. They'll make it a day event. You'll lead game day. You'll lead big noon kick when it comes to your, presumably if you win, and if you win in wow fashion, if there's some style points attached to it, you can really showcase yourself. It's going to screw you with recruiting that weekend. And everyone else said, yeah, in Nebraska, we're going to circle you as homecoming. Every other road venue said we're picking Nebraska as homecoming. Indiana picked Nebraska as homecoming. USC has picked Nebraska as homecoming. Go down the list of the road venues. So right now you're in the category of those Purdue's, Indiana's, Northwesterns, Maryland's, Rutgers, Illinois that don't draw well. You draw well. You've not performed well on the field. Start winning on the field, Elijah. You're not jacking around with hosting Friday night football. Maybe once a year you'll get used for a Friday night, so be it if it's on the road, but it really disrupts what has been a celebration 7 times a year in Lincoln.
And I think a lot of people are pointing to the fact that Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State are all not involved in Friday night football and saying,
it's not fair.
Their time will come.
I mean, they fall off, yeah.
What was it, 2 years ago, Ohio State opened the college football season on a Friday night against Minnesota?
It's Thursday.
I mean, like, it's not like they are
your
going
normal
to be completely
college football,
kept to the side.
Your normal college football opener Thursdays. not Fridays.
But my point still stands in that the helmet games such as that still have value on a Friday night. The simple fact of the matter is those three teams right now are just a bigger draw on a Saturday night than they will be on a Friday night.
For sure.
I still think they're going to be playing in Friday night football games as it comes. Probably not a coincidence that right now those teams probably are top of your conference. But, like, Oregon's going to be a great football team, too, and they're playing on Friday nights. No one's talking about that.
They're also new to the league. That's why they have no standing to say no. Well, and they're kind of used to it. I mean, the Pac-12 has done Friday football. Fox has thrown them on Fridays. I mean, I think USC Washington State was a Friday game. Oregon's played on Friday night before, so it's not super foreign to them. And the Pac-12's been an afterthought. Well, Pac-12 After Dark's the best thing they offered, baby.
Well, let me add to this that those big helmets, whenever big noon kickoffs first started coming into prominence, weren't playing at 11 a.m. and they slowly started adding them. That's kind of what we're seeing with Friday Night Football. They're testing it out in terms of, can it be a new primetime slot? And I think after this season, they're going to start experimenting around with, okay, we had good results on the 9 consecutive Friday Night Football games in year 1. Now this year, we're going to add an Ohio State game there. And it's probably not going to be Ohio State, Penn State, but can we get Ohio State, Indiana on a Friday night? Will that still draw numbers? Their time will come for Friday Night Football. But Nebraska, still being a helmet draw, it makes sense to add them on Friday night now. And it makes, honestly, from a TV partner point of view, more sense to put it at Memorial Stadium where there's going to be a good environment and it's going to be entertaining for a TV audience to see a rockin' Friday night Memorial Stadium
They'll kill it
crowd.
from a showcase standpoint. I mean, I'm not worried about that for Nebraska. The other part of it too, I mean, think of from it comes to revenue sharing and why the Pac-12 died. The Pac-12 died because their members went looking elsewhere. They were not getting taken care of by the TV networks. They weren't, despite their brands and their history and good football and really good players that came out of there, they could never land or never did land a killer TV deal like the Big Ten has, like the SEC has. Why is that? Well, a lot of times the Pac-12, they played their championship game for years, for God's sake, on Friday. That was part of their downfall. I mean, you had some good matchups where it was Oregon SC or Oregon State. You had some good ball games. You had some really good teams. But it didn't matter because no one watched on Friday night. You and I watched, or we'd check it out because we love college football. No one else on the West Coast cared. And you do have a caring section of this country that loves college football in the Midwest and in Big Ten countries. So you're going to adapt. How much other attention are you going to really be able to gain, though, around the country with it being on Friday night?
And that's what this year I think is going to be a tester in how much attention does it truly draw some eyes. I bet you'll see a year from now Ohio State playing Friday night, Michigan playing Friday night, Penn State.
They're going to kick and scream and absolutely not.
It does not. It's something we talked about. It's the TV partners that are calling the shots now. If they're seeing success on Friday night, it doesn't matter what Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State
But here's the thing. They don't need to play on Friday night because they're going to draw 8 million, 9 million, 10 million on Saturday night.
Are they against Indiana? Against Purdue?
Then they're not. Then that's not a worry because you're going to have other inventory to throw on there, and you'll still take Ohio State on ABC. You'll still take, not ABC anymore, but you'll still take Ohio State. You'll throw them on Peacock before you throw them on Fox.
But think about let's think about it from a perspective of, you know what? 11 a.m. we have Ohio State, Indiana, and who is the SEC throwing out there? Oh, it's going to be LSU against name another SEC school.
Oklahoma?
Sure. That's going to be the 11 a.m. SEC game. Do you want Ohio State, Indiana to compete with that, or do you put them in their own time slot on Friday night whenever you can still generate the numbers
You're
out of
never
them?
going to put Ohio State in that situation you're going to have another marquee conference game to go head-to-head with Oklahoma, Texas.
Yeah.
You have...
Exactly. That's my point.
That's my point. Many options to go with.
And there's not any competition on a Friday night. Ohio State's still going to draw eyes being Ohio State. So instead of putting them against
they'll
big
tell
SEC
you to go take a flying leap.
At some point, it's not going to matter. At some point, the TV dollars is all it's going to matter.
It shouldn't matter now because they're taking the same TV dollars everybody else is, and they told you to go to hell. We're not playing on Friday night.
Well, and Nebraska said that for years and years, and they had to relent.
Well, they had to relent because they're not as big and strong as they used to be with being able to throw their weight around. As they might be a brand, but they're not a winner.
I'm saying as the Friday slot becomes more valuable, it's not going to be advantageous for Ohio State to say no anymore. Just like Big Noon, you think Ohio State wanted to play Oregon at 11 a.m. a couple years ago? Traditionally, that's a prime time matchup.
They've always kicked off, though, at Big Noon against Michigan. It's always been a noon kickoff Eastern time.
That's a different thing completely.
They are used to playing at noon, though. Ohio State has been.
But they weren't used to having their real helmet games be at 11 a.m. until the 11 a.m. slot gained value, and they started being more comfortable with it. The goal of these TV partners is to give this 7:30 time slot on Friday nights more value this season to make it more worth the while of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State.
I mean, you've it's not Michigan SC on Friday night. I mean, their trial balloon here has teams that really have sucked in the Big Ten playing against some brand names.
And I'm not saying that we're going to get Michigan, Ohio State on a Friday night. I am saying whenever you're trying to eke all the value out that you can out of your top 10 team, instead of putting them in a bad matchup up against a great SEC matchup, which there's going to be great SEC matchups all day on Saturday, maybe the SEC follows you into Friday night too, and this becomes a non-issue. But I understand wanting to put like a top 10 Ohio State team on a Friday night whenever they're playing a bad opponent so you can still get your value out of that top 10 team.
Sure, and you'll do that, but you will not make that top 10 team host. You'll use them on the road. You'll use them on the road at Rutgers. You'll use them on the road at Purdue. And if you don't start winning and pulling your weight, this is what you're relegated to. You're relegated to not only playing on Friday night, but hosting on Friday night. And you're relegated to Nebraska's got a choice. They love that prime time on Friday. It's been a thing for years, obviously going back to 1990 for the Black Friday game. That's different, though. You got the holiday showcase, which is great. This is week 4, where you are buried and no one cares because you've got SC Michigan, UCLA, LSU, Tennessee, Oklahoma. I mean, even Iowa, Minnesota gets to play Saturday. Why? Because they've won. We'll bet.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Hail Varsity Radio, and Dr. Brandon Seifert with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Quick comment from Eric. He says Brady Hoke, Michigan, would be playing on Friday nights. Very true. Very true. Dr. Brandon, how are we doing? Thanks for the time today.
You bet, Chris. How are you guys doing?
We were just whining about having to do Friday night college football in Lincoln. That is happening.
It's. I don't think it's as big as a disaster as some people think. It's not great. Don't get me wrong.
Nebraska will kill it. They'll do a great job.
I think by the time the game rolls around, you're not going to want to do every game on Friday, but I think you'll be all right with the idea of one home game every couple years being on a Friday night.
Dr. Brandon, we're going golfing. We're going golfing
and that's
Friday
what I'm saying.
Friday the 21st.
Saturday the 21st.
Saturday the 21st.
I think people are going to get some value of it a Saturday. You know what? Is it a pain? Yeah, sure. But I think students will get classes canceled. It'll be an all-day event.
We're going to stream that Tennessee-Oklahoma game, Dr. Brandon, on the 18th, and it'll work. Let's talk some Jock Doc news here. Brewers right-handed pitcher Joe Ross has a back strain. He's been placed on the injured list. And Dr. Brandon, that's a pretty common injury, isn't it? Do you see a lot of pitchers getting back strains?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you start thinking about all those areas where there's just so much rotation that goes through that area. They use so much of their core trying to create kind of that acceleration, kind of whip as they throw the ball. And so low back strain, absolutely. It's a bit kind of a broad term when you think about a low back strain. What does that mean? It could be kind of a variety of areas that are involved here. So if we kind of talk anatomically, traditionally these are more kind of those paraspinous, those muscles that kind of come in along the kind of periphery of the spine. You also have basically where the pelvis and the spine kind of come together. We call it the sacroiliac joint, a common area to kind of flare up in a pitcher. And then you can even kind of travel around kind of the flank or the axillary portion and kind of even get up into like an oblique type strain. Usually if it's more of an oblique strain on the side, they'll tend to classify it as such and not really give it the low back strain kind of moniker. But essentially that's kind of what he is dealing with. Definitely pesky as a pitcher. We always talked before just about having injuries to these areas where you have so much overuse, so much force, so much torque going through those areas. It's hard to rest kind of in season, and so it does kind of leave that recovery timetable a bit ambiguous in terms of how long it'll take to get him back.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Brandon, it's nice for once we're not talking about Tommy John when we're talking about a pitcher. And I don't want to make that too much of a joke because this is still a nagging type injury. And that's where I'm going to go with this. With the lower back injuries, I know Joe Ross on the 15-day injured list. Does that seem like an accurate timetable to get this under control? I know some people who've dealt with back injuries in sports, and they can be the types of injuries that can derail an entire season when they keep on coming back. What does that 15-day injured list mean to you? Is that conservative in your mind, or what type of return to play are we looking at here?
Yeah, traditionally I would say that's probably a bit more aggressive. Like you said, Elijah, we tend to see these maybe go a touch longer. So they're probably being a bit optimistic. The hard part is obviously we always struggle a bit getting information on these kind of injuries in terms of how bad it really is. Is this maybe just something they're trying to get ahead of it? Maybe it's more mild pain. Maybe they look at it as like, hey, you just need a 2-week break here and you're going to be great. Where you start to worry about these injuries is if they start to get some of those kind of nerve radiating type pain. So, for example, they start to feel pain that starts in the back and then starts to go down the leg. Or they start to get maybe some numbness and tingling. Again, kind of that spreading to other areas is what you start to worry about. That even extends out that recovery time even longer. So my guess is here it's probably a bit of an optimistic play to say 15 days, but it also might just mean that it's more of just kind of a mild kind of irritation, just trying to get ahead of it before they get sick in the middle of the season.
Dr. Brandon, I know we've talked a couple different times about the PRP injections. Is that something that could be in play here for a lower back injury? My understanding is it's like the
platelet-rich plasma.
There it is. Could that be something that could help an injury like this, or what type of treatments are we looking at aside from just rest and keeping your lower back out of these positions that are going to cause it to be worked in such a way that causes pain?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is definitely an area where you could utilize kind of a variety of injections. This could be an area where, if it's kind of nerve impingement pathology, so there's swelling around a nerve, maybe a little bit of some other inflammatory issues, impinging or encroaching upon the nerve, they can do steroid shots in that area. So a steroid shot in this scenario might be reasonable, either in addition to or maybe just the PRP on the side. You could also do like a steroid shot in like the SI joint, that's that sacroiliac joint if it's over in that area. In terms of PRP, you absolutely could. You could do PRPs in this area too. And traditionally not typically using PRPs kind of around the nerve itself, but if it's more kind of the musculotendinous region, you could do that. If it's more kind of that sacroiliac joint, you could. It's a bit more on the experimental side, but in some of the athletes, high-level athletes like that, they will utilize some PRP kind of in the SI joint region to hopefully help promote some healing to the area.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us at Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Joe Ross, right-handed pitcher for the Brew Crew, is our topic. So I know we talk different parts that have a high re-injury rate, but where would you put the back on that list? Is it one of the more temperamental parts of the body that gets retweaked easily?
Yeah, I would, Chris. So that's the thing you worry about is that the dreaded retweak, and so this is definitely an area where that can occur, quite frequently. You do worry about that. Again, if you're lucky enough that it's fairly localized to that area, you don't have kind of those radiating, more systemic symptoms with it. They do tend to clear up reasonably fast. Again, the hard part here is you think about the amount of force that's going through that area, whether you're a pitcher or a hitter. There's just so much torque that goes through that area that it's hard, again, to kind of get that in-season rest that you need. It's also kind of tough, especially as a pitcher, as you kind of transition back into that, throwing routine, that throwing rotation. It's hard to, get back without doing the appropriate amount of reps to do what you need to do. And so all those things tend to lend itself to, more kind of retweaks, and probably something that does linger a bit more than 15 days, I would imagine, probably something he might struggle with the rest of the year.
Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday. And Dr. Brandon, last thought here, is there anything that can be done around that lower back to help him as he does return to play? I assume they're going to be slowly working him back into pitching, but is there any sort of protections that can be worn, or any sort of other preventative measures that can help prevent a re-injury once he does get back on the mound?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's such a great question, and that's really where you go with all these injuries is, how do you prevent? And it's all about kind of looking at the biomechanics. How did you get in this situation initially? So you got to look at his biomechanics. So what are the mechanics of throwing? What are the mechanics of some of the maybe drills that he's doing? I would, be taking a look at some of those extra kind of workout routines he's doing and see if we can maybe cut out some of the things that are more notorious for, causing inflammation to the area. But really, it's kind of the mechanics of his throwing. That's a big place where I would look. And then you start to look at other areas that might need to be strengthened. You look at the abductors, kind of the outside of the hip area. That could be a weak spot for him. Again, you start to look at his core. Is there maybe a core deficit that he has? Does he maybe have like a hip flexor deficit? All those things do tend to play a role in this in terms of creating imbalances, which then throws off your mechanics. And then again, you start throwing just tons and tons of volume with poor mechanics. And then here you go, you end up in a scenario like this.
Dr. Brandon will holler next week. Thanks again for the time today.
Okay, fellas. You guys take care.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
I think a steak and a beer bet is in order, but first I need to know that this is Elijah Herbel giving out his vaunted coleslaw recipe.
It's nothing special. It's a pretty bare bones coleslaw.
Did you do the Asian slaw? Have you done the Asian slaw before?
My aunt has a great Asian slaw.
That
recipe.
is gold.
We had it over the weekend.
It's a holiday weekend. There's going to be barbecuing. You got to have the Asian slaw, and you got to have Elijah's coleslaw.
My aunt made some Asian slaw for my uncle's birthday celebration last weekend, and I asked for the recipe, and I still haven't received it yet, but I'm hoping.
You got a Venmo her.
Cross my fingers.
She wants a free candle.
Oh, I gave her husband a free candle. That counts, right? It's a birthday present.
Not her.
But no, it's a bare bones coleslaw recipe. I like the easy cleanup. So some people get the fresh cabbage, get yourself a fresh carrot, maybe some fresh onion.
No, you just get the package.
Get the package. Get the cabbage, preferably like the 3 color where it's got the purple cabbage, the regular cabbage, and the carrots. And it's super easy. Super easy.
It's like 4 degrees in here, dude. It's so cold.
That was out of nowhere.
No, but I mean, I'm shivering. Continue. Sorry. That's not your recipe that you're laying out. That's making me just jittery.
No, it's super easy. We have to get into the steak and a beer. I assume you're talking about Friday night kickoffs because I'd love to bet you on that one. Because I'm going to be right.
No, you're never going to see Ohio State hosting a Friday night kickoff.
No, it was the idea of a premier college football game being at 11 a.m. 10 years ago was laughable, and look at it now. You get a premier college football game at 11 a.m. every single weekend.
You took over. You had Urban, you led in, and you had some good matchups. It worked.
The goal is to have that on Friday night as well.
And it ain't going to happen.
Okay, that's what you would have said 10 years ago about 11 a.m. football. But I digress. Easy, get the package of cabbage, a couple tablespoons of sugar to taste. I usually go 1 to 2 tablespoons of sugar, a couple tablespoons of that apple cider vinegar, and then 2/3 a cup of mayonnaise, salt and pepper to taste. It should note that salt is going to take a little bit of moisture out of that cabbage, out of the veggies, so it might look a little thick at first. As the salt sits, it's going to turn it into more of that traditional coleslaw tendency. Do it in the bag that you get the cabbage in. Keep your cleanup nice and easy. Is it going to wow anybody? No, it's not that special coleslaw. It's got the apples in there. That's why I use the apple cider vinegar. That's why I use the apple cider vinegar, because you get a little bit of that essence of apple. But I digress. Super easy coleslaw recipe. I think it was Moonbot that was asking for it, so I threw my recipe in there. It's not anything special. Gets the job done. Solid coleslaw.
Okay, Mavs, Wolves, T-Wolves minus 4.5.
T-Wolves minus 4.5?
Mm-hmm.
I think the T-Wolves win. I think 4.5 is a little bit tight.
You think it's a 3-point ball game? Okay. 4-point ball game.
And because I think the Mavs are going to cover, I'm going to take the T-Wolves to win, and they're going to cover that 4.5 points because I have to go against my initial thought. As much as I'd like to see the T-Wolves
So I've
lose,
got the Mavs.
Okay, I understand my own biases, and I understand that I'm biased against the Wolves based on what they did to my Nuggets. So understanding my own biases, I'm going to go against what my heart is telling me, what my head is telling me, and I'm going to take the T-Wolves to cover that.
Okay. The Mavs on the road is who I have. I am in the midst of a 3 steak and beer bet losing streak.
Well,
at some point, it will have to be short ribs. It'll have to be New York strip. It'll have to be filet, ribeye. I'll have to show up with a platter of some fine meat.
Just get me the ultimate steak whenever Ohio State hosts a Friday night game next year.
Ain't going to happen next year. We'll be back tomorrow at 4. Thank you.